How's it going, guys? I'm Aaron from PhoneDog.com, and a problem with Android, historically at least, has been battery life. It's never really been the best in the world in comparison to iOS, some of the Windows Phone offerings, and some smartphones of the past. Well, two devices are looking to change that by packing huge batteries in their respective devices. The Samsung Galaxy Note is one of those, and it's available now on AT&T for $299.99 with a 2-year agreement. Now, this thing has a 1.5 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon processor. It's got a big 5.3-inch Super AMOLED HD display, but it's packing a 2,500 milliamp hour battery, so bigger battery for Android, but it's going up against a big display. Can it make it? That's the question. Then we have the Motorola DROID RAZR MAXX over here with a huge 3,300 milliamp hour battery in the back that's non-removable, along with a 4.3-inch display, a 1.2 gigahertz dual-core TI OMAP processor, and Android 2.3. So huge battery over here in a thin form factor, pretty big battery over here in a thin form factor, but a pretty big device all around. Which one offers the best combination of features and, most importantly, battery life? We're going to find out in the dogfight. But first, some love to Best Buy Mobile, because they hook us up with phones like this for use in our One Paw Bandit game, which we turn around and give to you in the contest. So when you walk into Best Buy Mobile to get either of these devices, you'll walk out working. They'll help you set up your email, your web, your battery management settings, so when you walk out the door, you're getting the best possible experience at Best Buy Mobile. Let's take a look. Galaxy Note, DROID RAZR MAXX. Which one's the must-have device with all the features that all the cool kids want? We're going to find out starting right now. So if you're new to Android and you're like, you really want a device that has decent battery life, maybe you're coming from iOS, which historically does pretty well in the battery life department, or perhaps Windows Phone or another device, maybe coming up from a feature phone up to a smartphone, you're like, I just need something that I can make it through the day with moderate to pretty heavy use. Well, these are two awesome options that are worth considering. The one on the left, this big device, is the Samsung Galaxy Note. It's available now on AT&T in blue and in white for $299.99 with a 2-year agreement. Then you have the Motorola DROID RAZR MAXX over here, available now on Verizon, also $299.99. But the real winner, in addition to some pretty awesome specs on both of these devices, they really do well in the battery life department. You've got a 2,500 milliamp hour battery over here in the Galaxy Note, but it's powering a pretty heavy display, or pretty large display and heavy display. So let's go through the specs and kind of take a look at these. 1.5 gigahertz dual-core Snapdragon processor. It's got a 5.3-inch Super AMOLED HD display, and you can really see how big this device is in comparison to some of the other devices on the market. Perhaps the Galaxy S2, you can see, I mean, it's pretty hefty device, at least on the display front. 5.3-inch Super AMOLED HD display, 1280 by 800 pixels here, an 8-megapixel camera with 1080p HD video recording, a front-facing shooter as well, and Android 2.3 with TouchWiz version 4.0. So available, like I said, in blue and in white, and actually this is blue, believe it or not. You can kind of see it with the light on the battery door there. But Galaxy Note here on the back. But the big kicker, in addition to, of course, the S Pen, so it does have some stylus-type input as well because of the large display and the fact that it's kind of a smartphone tablet hybrid. The real winner, in my opinion, 2,500 milliamp hour battery, much bigger than anything we've seen on Android devices in the past. And granted, it does have a large display, but I'm going to go ahead and spoil it a little bit and tell you that even with a large display, it does a pretty decent job in the battery life department. So nice to have a bigger battery. Then you've got the Motorola DROID RAZR MAXX over here. This is a new one from Verizon. It's available, like I said, for $299.99, and it really is a follow-up to the Motorola DROID RAZR, which launched late last year. This thing was shown off at CES, as was this, and they're both available now for $300. So you can see it looks a lot like the original, or the original DROID RAZR, I should say, and gone through so many variations of RAZR devices, but it's still an impressive 8.99 millimeters thin. So even with a big battery, it's still a very thin device, and actually this one feels better in the hand to me than the original DROID RAZR, because the original one kind of had a hump here, and it just felt like a too thin of a device. I think there is a point where you can get too thin, and I thought the DROID RAZR was almost there. So it was 7.1 millimeters thick. This is 8.99 millimeters thick, and it's packing a 1.2 gigahertz dual-core processor, TI OMAP processor at that, a 4.3-inch Super AMOLED Advanced display with Pentile technology, 540 by 960 pixels, an 8-megapixel camera with 1080p HD video recording back here, a front-facing shooter, and of course Android 2.3 with Motorola's custom user interface. So not a whole lot of difference there. Both are running custom user interfaces. Big winner here, 3,300 milliamp hour battery. It's non-removable, but still a huge battery. The Motorola claims you can get 21.5 hours of talk time. You can go from, I think it's Vegas, Nevada to LA and back using GPS, or you can watch 8 hours of movies. So quite a bit of stuff you can do on this device, and it's got a hefty battery to boot. 3,300 milliamp hours, yet still 8.99 millimeters thin. That's pretty impressive. So the batteries are the only things that these devices have going for it. Obviously a beautiful HD display over here, and while this device is a little bit too big for my hand, I think a lot of people are going to find this device to be just a little bit too big. It's past that point. I think 4.7 inches is really the stopping point. I think anything larger for a lot of people, it's going to be challenging to use. The only exception I'll make to that is for people that are maybe in their 50s, 60s, or people that have a hard time seeing. This could be a great device because you can really enlarge the text and you've got a lot of screen space to work with. So if you have trouble seeing, regardless of your age, regardless of where you're at, this could be a good option for you. Otherwise, I think it's going to be a little bit too large for everyday use. But still, big display, and it comes pre-installed, like I said, with TouchWiz 4.0 and a lot of AT&T applications that I've since uninstalled, because if you're following the videos on YouTube, I'm using this as my personal device for 30 days as part of my Samsung Galaxy Note Challenge. So I've uninstalled some of the AT&T stuff, but out of the box you're going to get stuff like Code Scanner, AT&T Navigator, AT&T Ready to Go. You get some other AT&T stuff. I'm trying to remember some of the ones I've uninstalled. Live TV, you get featured apps, and then you get some Samsung stuff as well. Media Hub pre-installed here. You get My AT&T, which is obviously an AT&T thing. And then you get YP Mobile as well. Some of the stuff's unable, or is able to be installed. Some of the stuff is unable to be installed. YP Mobile's got to be on there. A couple of the others. My AT&T is uninstallable. I think Navigator, if I remember right, is not able to be uninstalled. But there are a couple on there that they don't let you remove. But still, AT&T for the most part has done a pretty decent job of listening to their customers and seeing what they want to be uninstalled. So you'll see, obviously, if you remember the TouchWiz devices, you've got 5 shortcuts down here because of the large 5.3-inch display. A lot different than I happen to have the Galaxy S2 on my desk. And you can see here, a lot different there with the 4 as opposed to the 5 just because of the larger display. So, got a big honking display, you got your AT&T, I say big honking in a lot of videos, but that's okay. Big honking display, that's a good way to mention it. And then AT&T's network ID, so they do a little bit of a flip here as opposed to having the network ID up in the notifications bar like they do on most Android devices. AT&T's flipped it around because for whatever reason, they like to keep it up in the top left-hand corner, and then the date is down there where it would typically be on most other carriers. But you've got some shortcuts here: Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, GPS, airplane mode, and then screen rotation as well, and 7 home screens on this bad boy. Now this one is powered by a Snapdragon processor, which historically the Exynos devices have worked a little bit better than the Snapdragon equipped devices. Snapdragon's the only one right now that works with LTE, so whenever you get an LTE Samsung device on AT&T or Verizon or wherever, they have to revert to a different processor like TI OMAP or Snapdragon as opposed to the Exynos processor. But Exynos historically runs a lot better, but I will say, you know, in using this for a couple of days, I've been mostly pleased with the speed. You see some stutters here or there, but mostly, as you can see, transition effects are reasonably fast, and I can come down here and access my home screens, and everything looks pretty fluid for the most part. So obviously I know a lot of people would like to get their hands on the Exynos processor, which is what the international version comes with, but you're stuck with HSPA Plus technology as opposed to LTE. So over here, Verizon stuff pre-installed, VCast apps. You get what else do you get on this device? Device setup, guided tours, and actually you can go to the Verizon shortcut here in Motorola's custom user interface and see some of the stuff that comes pre-installed. You get, like I said, device setup, IM mobile hotspot, My Verizon Mobile, NFL Mobile, VCast tones, Verizon Video, visual voicemail, which on Verizon is an additional $2.99 per month, and then VZ Navigator. Now, unfortunately, most of the Verizon stuff can't be uninstalled. They aren't at that point yet, although the stuff that can be uninstalled, Let's Golf 2 and Madden NFL 12. I like this little feature in Motorola's custom UI where you can just press and hold the icon and uninstall it directly from the actual applications list as opposed to digging around the settings and deleting it from there. So you can see this one just went through an update, so you can see the text messaging icon has changed. And on that note, let's go ahead and go into text messaging on both of these devices. I'm going to pull the Galaxy Note back here because, like I said, I use this as my personal device. So I've got a bunch of text messaging threads on here. Let's go into new messaging on this bad boy as well. And you can see again, take a look at the screen difference here, or difference in screen real estate. 4.3 inches, 5.3 inches, so a full inch of difference on the Galaxy Note. We'll go to text messaging and take a look here and see. Apparently it's going to R. But you can see the 2 different types of keyboards. Now you get a couple of keyboards pre-installed on the Galaxy Note. Ice Cream Sandwich Keyboard Donation is a keyboard that I use and I found in the Android market and really like, because I've always liked Android 4.0's keyboard. But you get the Android keyboard, which, since this is running 2.3, you get the gingerbread keyboard, you get Samsung's keypad, and you get Swipe pre-installed out of the box as well. Over here, also running Android 2.3, so you get Motorola's multi-touch keyboard, and you can see that I really dig that Ice Cream Sandwich keyboard, but you get Swipe pre-installed out of the box as well. So if Swipe's your preference on either one of these devices, you're going to be just fine. So let's take a look here. Keyboard, we're going to use the Samsung keypad just for sake of example, since the Ice Cream Sandwich one doesn't come pre-installed. So we'll say Quick Brown Fox is liking the large display. And then period. And obviously, you can use the built-in S Pen, which is something we'll cover in part 2 of the video more than part 1, but you can use the S Pen and you can come over here and you can type that way as well. So you can do space, so kind of reminiscent of the Palm days here, where I can say, hey there, and you can see it usually keeps up with me. How are you? But, of course, I have to space like that, and still I'm getting used to it myself. But portrait landscape transitions are nice and fluid on this device, and you can see they've implemented a nice little transition effect on the Galaxy Note. It actually did come over to this device on stateside as opposed to some of the past Galaxy devices where they've had some neat transition effects, and for whatever reason they haven't made it over to their US variants. But pretty decent performance there. And then over here I like Motorola's multi-touch keyboard, and it works pretty well on the 4.3-inch display. And you'll see that because this is an AMOLED display, as is this actually, but because this is an AMOLED display on both of these devices, you're going to see some darker colors. You'll notice that the keyboard's darker, the background here is darker. It's not that typical gray color scheme that we've seen on past Motorola devices. So the Quick Brown Fox is happy to be alive. I'm just going to do something simple here so you can see portrait to transition effects, or portrait to landscape transition effects rather, pretty quick and pretty easy. So both of these devices are easy to type on, but let's talk about the input here a little bit and some of the peripherals. You get a micro SD card slot and your micro SIM card slot behind this little battery door, or this little cover here, if you will, along with your IMEI that's written down there, so the reps can easily access it if you go into the store. You got your power button over the right side, volume rocker over here as well, and then up top, your 3.5mm headphone jack, your micro USB charging port, and your HDMI port. Nothing down here at the bottom, but you do get capacitive buttons just below the Verizon logo, menu, home, back, and then search. Over here, you get your volume rocker on the left side, typical Samsung layout, power button on the right side, and then down here your micro USB charging port along with your S Pen input, and then your 3.5mm headphone jack up top. So again, holding in the hand a little bit harder to do on this device, but let's quickly jump into the web. Now both of these devices are LTE capable, and this is kind of a battle between AT&T and Verizon's LTE. You've got LTE on this one, LTE on this one, and also, you know, it's interesting to look and see what the power consumption has been on both of these devices, being that they're both LTE devices. AT&T's kind of claimed in the past that their LTE technology is a little bit more efficient than Verizon's, at least when it comes to battery life, and so it's interesting, or has been interesting, to take a look at that and see which one's the best. So obviously for media, the Galaxy Note's a great device. Whether you're browsing the web, whether you're doing YouTube videos, because of this big 5.3-inch display, it really gives you a quality web experience and a quality YouTube experience. Any videos you're watching, any music videos, things like that. And of course, pinch to zoom functionality, very responsive on this device with little to no lag. And again, transition effects are nice and smooth as well. You don't get a whole lot of lag, a little bit of lag right there. Seemed like it took a little bit of time. And same thing over here. This one does really well in the browsing department, but again, you can really see the smaller display on this device. So it depends, you know, not as pocketable, but if you do a lot of web browsing, you do a lot of YouTube watching, that's something that's really important to you, the Note could be an excellent option just for the screen size and the screen size alone. Also, it is an HD display as opposed to this not being an HD display. So that's a pro as well. Pinch to zoom, very responsive on this device, and you can see it offers more of a browser-like input up here with full back and forward buttons, a full URL bar, your pages that are open, and then your bookmarks. So I can come in here and see that Phone Dog's open. I can go to, and did not mean to do that, I can go back to web. Let's go over here and let's open up a new window, and you can see it just brings it up like a new card, and I can flip right back and forth between those pretty quickly and pretty easily, though you did see a little bit of lag right there in terms of responsiveness. Now over here, pinch to zoom responsive, portrait to landscape transitions, very responsive, and then over here, you've got your Phone Dog page, and then I can add a new window, although it doesn't give me a text, or gives me a text preview. It does not give me a visual preview. You can see Google and then Phone Dog, but I don't get that image of where I left off like I do with this device. So you can see, let's go in here, and I can see right where I left off. So different browsing input, different way it looks, but both are pretty effective in the web browsing department.